Hello, welcome to today's travel presentation. I am so glad you've chosen to join us as we explore closer to home with Hurtigruten. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sandra Romanauskas, and I am a travel agent working from my home in Manotick. My agency is Experience More Travel. I'm partnered with the amazing support team of the Toronto-based travel agent next door, who ensures that I have the newest and greatest tools to serve my clientele. Today, I'm pleased to welcome back Kristin, who represents Hurtigruten. Last week, we spoke about expedition cruising and what makes Hurtigruten unique in this field. This week, we're going to spend the next 30 minutes or so exploring what we like to call our closer to home adventures, the Hurtigruten way. When many people think polar and expedition, Antarctica comes to mind. And I'm not going to deny that that would be an amazing adventure, and one that maybe we'll cover in another presentation. But not everyone is prepared to venture quite so far away from home. Fortunately, Hurtigruten offers some pretty amazing adventures north of us. Think Alaska and even the Northwest Passage. So Alaska, many cruise ships, Kristin, go to Alaska. You can go with up-teen cruise companies to Alaska. What would make somebody want to do an Alaska expedition? What makes it stand out?
Thanks, Sandra. That's a very good question. And again, thank you so much for having me today. So going to Alaska with Hurtigruten has a very different landscape to it, both figuratively and literally. I think we're more used to seeing a 7-day itinerary typically when going to Alaska. And that changes dramatically when you actually do this experience with Hurtigruten, because our packages range from 14 up to 18 days. I like to say that we put the wild back into the wilderness of Alaska, going back really into the heart of the wild frontier of, I think, what we're all envisioning Alaska to look like and what this type of experience should be about. And for us, it's really honing in on the local communities, the cultures, the wildlife, the beautiful landscapes, and just helping you to experience what exists so close to our own home, which we are very fortunate for. So why Alaska with us? Of course, now we're getting very off the beaten path with a lot of the places that we do go. We are going to places that the larger ships either just don't go or they physically can't go just because of their size. And as you heard me say, we do feature much longer itineraries to give our guests really that full immersive experience, to get the nice mix of, the glaciers and the ice, but the wilderness, but getting down on the water level to experience things up close. It really makes for a very unique experience when considering a cruise to Alaska. And the nice thing is we have a very value-packed expedition when we are in this destination. So of course, all of your meals on board, house wine, beer, pop, are included with lunch and dinner. We do give you the wind water resistant expedition jacket and then loan of our equipment as well, because we will run into some situations where we might be in, maybe some icy climates or in some watery or mucky areas. So we make sure to protect you with our gear. But what's really neat too is we include a range of onshore exploration and activities. And we also, my favorite part is we get to do some scenic cruising, not only with our ship through some of these most amazing fjords in Alaska, but we actually get our guests down into the zodiacs. So you're at water level and we can be exploring up close and personal with hopefully some whales if we're lucky, but also getting into, some of the glacier areas where we can see the ice from the water level and more up close. And of course, this all comes packed with our expedition team, who are our experts in the destination in certain fields like ornithology, geology, might be Russian history, and they really bring the whole experience together and help educate our guests on where we are, what we're seeing, what we're doing, so that our guests come home as the experts in traveling to a place like Alaska. So this is just a sample of a couple of the itineraries that we have. This is a northbound and a southbound version of Southeast Alaska. And the only difference between these two itineraries is that in the northbound itinerary, we do a stop in Cordova, and in the southbound itinerary, we do a stop in Alert Bay, and we actually get to travel all the way through the Canadian Inside Passage, which I think as Canadians, it's a really neat experience to be able to go through this. And I'll show you a picture of what that looks like further in the presentation. So one of the experiences that you'll get to have with us, so imagine going to Misty Fjords, and of course you can see why the name, there tends to be, you know, kind of fog hovering around in and around the evergreen forests. And so we will actually get out into the zodiacs, be down at water level, and we can go in and out of these inlets exploring, looking for maybe wildlife on shore, bald eagles up in the air. And there's such a varying landscape here too, because yes, we have the evergreen forest, but there's also some beautiful granite cliffs that have, you know, these waterfalls that come streaming down because of course the snow from our winter season is now starting to melt and coming down the sides of the granite cliffs. So really a unique opportunity to just kick off your expedition if you're doing the northbound route. And then we get into some of these smaller ports. Now, we're used to seeing on the larger cruise itineraries, Ketchikan, Juneau, and Skagway. Those are sort of your typical major ports that you'll see when doing larger ship cruising. And you'll notice that on our itineraries, we don't actually do any of those ports. We stick to a lot of the smaller communities. They might have Inuit heritage here or still in existence today, like Wrangell, for example. So we'll go ashore, and Wrangell is a place where, you know, imagine just one major street downtown is their downtown, and we can go and explore the petroglyphs that exist right on the beaches where we land, and they have amazing totem poles that are just kind of moss covered off in the forest, just literally walking distance from where we disembark from. So really just brings such a different perspective to exploring some of the ports in Alaska. And Wrangell itself has actually been owned by 4 different cultures, countries. It's been British at one point, it's been Russian, it's been owned by the Tlingit culture, and of course today is now owned by the US in Alaska. So one of the nice things about doing this particular itinerary, our Southeast Alaska, is the ice opportunities that we get to have here, because this is part of, I think, what we envision when going to Alaska. So in our 14-day package, we're going to get 3 different opportunities to explore the ice. Starting off first in Tracy and Endicott Arm Fjords. And this is a neat experience because the glacier is just so massive and right at the edge of the water. So again, this is a great opportunity for us to jump in the zodiacs and get down at water level. And if the conditions are safe enough and allow for it, we will offer optional kayaking as well that you can see our guests enjoying here. One of the other ice experiences we'll get is in Icy Bay. And why this is a different experience is because there is actually 3 different glaciers that feed into Icy Bay, hence the name, because there is a lot of ice breaking off of these glaciers. So when we are in our zodiacs doing some scenic cruising here, there is quite a bit more ice flow that's in the water that we can see and feel and scrape under the zodiacs. So our focus when we're here will be specifically on the Goyot Glacier. And then College Fjord is a very different glacier viewing experience. It reminds me a lot of being in Norway. You've got the beautiful snow-capped mountains behind you. And then, you know, it's almost like glacier after glacier after glacier. There's at least 5 that we will get to see when we're doing scenic cruising in College Fjord. And again, we'll get you down, obviously, so long as conditions will allow, get our guests into the zodiacs and do some more up close and personal cruising at the water level. And these glaciers just come so beautifully down the sides of the mountains. And in the summertime, when it's much more green, it really does have, as a Norwegian company, of course, we compare a lot of things to Norway, and it really has that, that type of effect, very similar look to it. And of course, when we go to Alaska, you know, you want to have an opportunity, hopefully, to see whales. It's one of the main highlights of visiting a destination like this. And although we'll never say that we guarantee whales, we're pretty confident that we will have a very good opportunity to see whales when we're doing scenic cruising in William Henry Bay. So we will scenic cruise here both by ship and, again, if conditions allow, in our Zodiacs. And if it's safe enough, we will actually do a nature landing here as well. You can see there's a very large seal population that we might have the opportunity to enjoy while we're here. So Cordova, this is unique to the northbound itinerary, and it might not be a place you would ever think of going on a cruise, but you wonder, like, why have I heard that name before? And this was actually just outside of Cordova was the scene of the Exxon Valdez oil spill back in March of 1989. And unfortunately, the Exxon Valdez ship actually scraped along the reef that exists just outside of Cordova and created one of the worst oil spills in the world in terms of environmental and wildlife damage when this happened. So unfortunately, this is the sad story that is attached to Cordova. Thankfully, things have thrived since then and kind of repaired themselves, but we have lost some bird population pretty significantly from it. But it's just a nice little quaint fishing town that we get to enjoy. There's no roads or anything that access Cordova. So the only way you can really get to it is by plane or by ship. So it's a very unique opportunity for us to be visiting there because there isn't constant tourism coming in and out of this destination. And then when we do the southbound itinerary of Southeast Alaska, the Canadian Inside Passage and Alert Bay is unique to this itinerary. So this picture down on the bottom left, imagine being in the ship on, you know, just cruising through these beautiful, beautiful landscapes. Again, very reminiscent of what it's like going through the Norwegian fjords. So this is a real treat, I think, especially for us Canadians, to be able to see the full Inside Passage. This is unique to the southbound itinerary. And then on the northern tip of Vancouver Island, we're going to stop in Alert Bay. And this is home to a First Nations community. So they will show us their paintings and carvings, their totem poles. They have a museum there, and will help educate our guests on their way of life in Alert Bay. So then, just to have a look at one of my favorite itineraries is visiting Alaska, but going basically as far north as we possibly can in the state. So going around the Aleutian Islands and either starting or finishing in Nome, Alaska. And you can see there's a little airplane on this itinerary, and that's because we do include a charter flight. So if your voyage is starting in Nome, we're going to charter flight you from Vancouver up to Nome to join our ship. And of course, we will do the same if you are doing the itinerary in the reverse, because we do realize, especially for a place like Nome, there is not frequent airfare here or major air carriers, and even flights that do visit here are quite expensive. So we work all of this into your package with Hurtigruten, which is great. So I won't take you through the southeast part of this itinerary because it does mirror quite similarly some of the places that we got to visit in the previous itineraries I've shown you. I will focus more on the Aleutian Islands part of it. And what's kind of neat about this type of destination, because Southeast Alaska, we see a lot of those evergreen forests. We see quite a bit more ice in that part of the state. But once you're getting sort of past Kodiak, you really get into the raw, rugged, completely off the beaten path part of the state, because the large ships just don't go past usually that Seward Whittier part of Alaska. So this really does become small ship territory, and we get the opportunity to have some pretty amazing experiences here. So on this particular day, we kind of leave this as to like the captain's choice. We'll have a pilot on board with us in this area as well, to help us decide which is the best opportunity of where we should be visiting that day. It could be Geographic Harbor, Kanak Bay, Kukak Bay. But what's special about this area is this is brown bear country. And it's an opportunity where we hope to get some amazing photographic opportunities, you know, seeing the bears trying to catch clams in the rivers. And as you can see, a couple of our guests had some great opportunities of, you know, seeing some bears up close during one of our previous trips. So this is something, again, we will use the knowledge of the pilot and the wildlife sightings from previous experiences to really hone in on the best experience that we will have on this particular day. Now, CHIGNIK, again, probably something that many of us have not heard of before. And I'll be honest, we actually stumbled upon CHIGNIK last summer as a happy accident. And it was one of those places where we were so warmly welcomed that our captain was like, yep, we need to be going to CHIGNIK with every one of these Aleutian Island sailings that we are doing. So imagine we're sailing through the beautiful archipelago. They have some amazing rock cliffs in this area, as you can see in the bottom left-hand photo there. And we stumbled upon this town, and you can see Amundsen is docked there. And when we actually docked there, the mayor came out to greet us and then welcomed all of our guests to come and see their fish factory and get to know the locals. So this is something that we decided to keep in as a staple. And again, you're not going to go off and do any major shore excursions from here. The beauty of it is just getting to know, you know, the local communities along this part of the coast that are just so happy and welcoming to showcase what they have and where they live. And Dutch Harbor, also known as Unalaska, kind of a funny name there. But if there's any fans of The Deadliest Catch, this is actually where that television show takes place. It is the largest fishing port in the US. So we will get privy to, you know, how this all comes to be and the major fishing operation that happens out of Dutch Harbor. And as you can see, there's just some amazing scenery, almost a little bit like, I think the top left-hand photo is a little bit reminiscent of like Ireland, Scotland, like exactly. They're, you know, just very European looking with their very green cliffs. They do also have some Russian Orthodox community here, so we'll have the opportunity, if we choose, to walk into the town and explore the local church there as well. And then very unique for cruising in this part of the area are the islands of St. Paul and St. Matthew. And these are really getting off the beaten path now, because we're now no longer on the mainland. We are off in individual islands. So the island of St. Paul, which you can see the two photos on the right-hand side here. The funny thing is they shouldn't have made such a permanent sign, because there are actually over 300 bird species now that can be found in St. Paul. This is a very popular area for birds to migrate to in the spring. You can even see, you're probably looking at that thinking like, boy, that's a funny looking puffin, but there are even tufted and horned puffins that we can see when we're in St. Paul. So we will actually be met on shore by a couple ornithologists that are local to the area, and they will take our guests through discovering and learning about all of the different bird species that are located here. This is like bird paradise for anybody who has that interest. And it's also home to basically the world's largest northern fur seal population. About half of the world's northern fur seals live here. And you can see just down on the bottom, they literally are just kind of scattered about everywhere. Again, of course, we do maintain safe distance when it comes to viewing wildlife, both for their safety and ours, but just sort of a unique wildlife opportunity that we'll get when we're exploring St. Paul. And then moving over to St. Matthew. So this is one of two completely uninhabited places that we will get to visit when we do this particular itinerary. The second one, which I didn't show you, was called Unga Village. So this is they call St. Matthew the island that humans couldn't conquer. It's just so barren, and with its location in the Bering Sea, the wind conditions, it's not ideal even for seafarers to be going in and around here from days of the past. So nobody ever permanently inhabited St. Matthew. And you can see from the bottom left-hand photo, it's just very stark, very barren. So we will do a landing onto the black sand beaches of St. Matthew and go on some exploration hikes just to see, if we can find any remnants of some of the temporary habitats that people had attempted to resurrect from previous exploration here. And with this experience, we finish off or start in Nome, Alaska. And again, very off the beaten path, very remote compared to what we might be used to seeing when it comes to an Alaska cruise. So I'm going to finish off with this part of showcasing Alaska with a fantastic video just to really help you understand and to showcase what this destination has to offer. And Sandra, if you want to turn your camera off here as well, I will do the same.
Okay. Whoops.
All right, here we go.
That's such
I
an
just love
amazing
that
video.
video.
It's so incredible. It
It's
makes
a
me want to go right
personal
now.
favorite.
Yeah.
I know, and that's the thing. I think it's something where, we just don't expect to see Alaska in that way. So it really does make for a very unique experience here. So are you ready to move on to the ultimate expedition, the
The
Northwest
Northwest
Passage?
Passage. Oh, I sure am. I'm ready to leave tomorrow.
Exactly. I think for me, this is like, okay, I must admit, I've now been to Antarctica, so this is next on the bucket list, this voyage. So what I love about this photo, this is actually a satellite photo from NASA of the Northwest Passage, which is basically the transit between the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean, and has been attempted many, many times in history of finding that transit all the way through. And the reason why this is so difficult is because, of course, typically in and around all of these coastal islands, there's a lot of snow, there's a lot of ice, as you can see just sort of in the kind of top left-hand side of this photo. You can see all of the ice that is kind of accumulated here. So why we can only do this once, or I should say attempt to do this once per year, is we need to wait until closer towards the end of summer to hope that the ice and snow has receded enough that we can sail all the way through the Northwest Passage. 2019, we were successful in doing this. We did hire the help of one of the Canadian icebreaker ships as well to go in front of us during certain parts of the transit to aid in the transit of the Northwest Passage. But again, this is it's literally the ultimate expedition because you get to experience some of the Inuit local communities, the barren landscapes. If we're lucky, maybe we'll see some polar bears, some muskox, some narwhal, and just an opportunity to really experience it all in our own backyard, just north of where we all live. And it's just, again, it sells out quickly. So 2021 doesn't even exist. It's already sold out. We're already into the 2022 season. So I'll show you that itinerary. We do also have a couple shorter itineraries as well, because this is 26 days, the full route. So this, again, we include the charter flight to get you from Vancouver up to Nome, Alaska. So you can tell at the end of our Alaska season, we finish off in Nome and then we go through and do our Northwest Passage. So this travels from Nome, Alaska, all the way down over to Halifax on our East Coast. Now, again, not everybody gets the full 26 days. So we do have a couple shorter itineraries where you can do a half transit of the Northwest Passage. This particular one, again, these are departing in 2022. This one leaves from Reykjavik and it sails around the southern and eastern coasts, southern and western coasts of Greenland. And we do get to touch on Pond Inlet, on Baffin Island, and around and finish off in Cambridge Bay. Again, we will include a charter flight to get you down to Edmonton because it's not an easy place to get to. And then on the other extreme, if you want to start in Cambridge Bay, we'll fly you up from Edmonton, and you can essentially do this itinerary in the reverse, go down the west coast of Greenland, and then finish off right on our own coast again in Halifax. But just to show you a couple highlights, let me go back there, of what it looks like to sail through the Northwest Passage. So this is us doing some scenic cruising. Now you hear me talk about ice cruising. Not everywhere has ice that we go. So even in the opportunities where we've got some beautiful rock faces like this is Smoking Hills. Of course, name doesn't need to be explained. We will get out and be at water level in the Zodiacs to go out and do some close-up exploring. We also get to visit a place called Urehaven, and this is actually the location of where Roald Amundsen, the famed Norwegian explorer, overwintered around between the years of 1903 and 1904, while he was trying to find the transit all the way through the Northwest Passage. I think aptly named that our ship, the MS Roald Amundsen, made one of its first major trips all the way through the Northwest Passage in 2019. So Roald Amundsen, the explorer, was the first to find this transit back in 1906. He successfully completed the full voyage through. So we'll get to go ashore, and there are still a couple remnants of his cabin when he overwintered here, and we will be met by the local community. The elders will greet us, and the local kids as well love to put on a performance for our guests, so we'll join them in their community center, and they will do some of their cultural dances for us, and just help to, you know, gain a mutual understanding and relationship with each other. We also will attempt to do a landing at Fort Ross, and this is actually the site of one of the last Hudson's Bay trading posts back in 1937, and it is still quite well preserved inside. There are tables and chairs that you can sit at. There's a couple bunk beds. They still have shelves full of, you know, basically supply and stock. So it's kind of a neat, I think, history, especially for Canadians, to be able to see, you know, the last Hudson's Bay Company trading post just in our own backyard. And we do get to go and explore the wilds and the barren areas of the Northwest Passage. And again, we sometimes always think Arctic has to mean ice, but in the summertime, that's not always the case. Dundas Harbor is such a great place that we will go ashore, do a landing with our expedition team. They'll take us off on some, you know, incredible hikes. But imagine just being, you know, the only people in this huge mountainous area, you know, with cliffs soaring all around you and just nobody else is around. There really is nothing like it. It's a difficult experience to describe. Being in our own country, but feeling like we're so far removed and so far away from everything. And Beechy Island. So this is a place that we attempt to do a landing to pay the respects to seafarers whose lives were lost in the past, who were attempting to find their way through the Northwest Passage. I think one of the most famed explorers that we might all be familiar with is Sir John Franklin. So he headed out around 1845. He left England to come over and attempt his journey with two of his ships, the HMS Terror and the HMS Erebus, to find the transit through the Northwest Passage, and unfortunately was not successful. And 3 out of the 4 of these graves are actually members of the failed Franklin expedition. So we will come ashore to pay our respects to them. And actually the 4th grave is belonging to a person who later on in the later 1800s was coming to find, you know, what happened to the Franklin expedition. And unfortunately, he fell the same fate of expeditions prior to him. So there's so much history from an exploration standpoint that exists in this part of the Northwest Passage. And our expedition team will really help educate and bring a full understanding to our guests by doing lectures on board about these very specific journeys and, you know, what we know about them. Because what is neat is actually Parks Canada in 2014 and 2016 found the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror ships that had obviously, you know, washed up remnants of it onto shore. We found some of it closer to areas near Beechy Island. And again, it's like trying to piece together what happened, you know, the full story behind it. And then we will finish off sort of the Canadian part of the Northwest Passage in Pond Inlet in Nunavut. It does exist on the island of Baffin Island. And again, it's another great opportunity where we get to meet and get to know the locals. We also, too, as well, like to invite them onto our ship. They like to do cultural performances for us. And we think it's very important to have a mutual understanding of each other, because this is going to foster, you know, relationships between us for years and years to come. And so that, you know, future explorers can have the same opportunities to be able to travel and to meet these these amazing people. So once we finish the Canadian part of the Northwest Passage, as you heard me say, we do go down the west coast of Greenland and visit places like Ilulissat, which is just iceberg haven. And actually the iceberg that sank the Titanic actually broke off and came from Ilulissat in Greenland. And then we will head down the east coast of Canada to finish off this amazing itinerary. Again, in our own backyard, exploring closer to home in Halifax. So that's just a couple examples of, you know, just taking some amazing experiences and expeditions in and around our own country. And again, I think it's parts that a lot of us never really assumed or understood that would be possible. And they are, and they really, I think, are a great way for us to, you know, we all try and tick off like every province that we've been to. Now we need to, you know, get up into the wilds of Canada and go to the Arctic as well.
Well, it's great because your ships, I know you didn't touch on this very much in this video, but last time you talked quite a bit about how the ship, the Hurtigruten ship, is not the Royal Amundsen. I think that's the only one that goes through here. They, it's 500 people, not 5,000. There's no roller coasters, there's no casinos, there's no discos. It's all about the wildlife and the ship and what you're there to see. So you can you're not going to be in this big lost jungle of huge ships, which is great for some people, but in this place, this experience is all about what where you are and not the ship that you're on. So
and I totally agree with that, because I think especially in these parts, even when you are in, you know, even further north up in Svalbard or down in Antarctica, we don't want the ship to take away from the destination. Because ultimately why you're going to these places is to experience the wild, you know, the unknown, the very few that have visited here. It's not about the ship. The ship is there, yes, to be your comfortable base camp at sea, and to be an extension of the destination. So a place where we can all gather with like-minded individuals and learn more about where we are and why we're there. But again, it's not meant to take away from the destination, because with the places that we are so lucky to sail, it really is all about getting, you know, immersed and deep into, you know, the places that we get to travel.
Well, that was an amazing tour, Kristin. I loved seeing all these wonderful places we can go. For anyone watching, if you have any questions about anything you saw, about Alaska, about the Northwest Passage, about any other places that you think you might like to travel with Hurtigruten or otherwise, please, my contact information is here on the slide. You can contact me through phone, website, or email. I'd be happy to tell you all about where you can travel closer to home or otherwise. So Kristin, thanks again for joining us. And we'll have to decide on what we'll do for part 3 of the, maybe we'll go in search of polar bears in part 3 of our series.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sandra. It was such a pleasure.